My daughter-in-law's text lit up the screen in the dead of a snowy night. "You're not invited this year. Just the immediate family." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I didn't cry. I didn't call my son to ask why. I simply laid the phone face down on the table, opened my little leather notebook, and started writing down the names of everyone she had cut out of this family over the years. If she wanted to play God with the guest list, two could play that game. The notification flashed on my screen. "You're not invited this year. Just the immediate family." 11 words. No explanation, no apology. Outside, the first dusting of snow was settling on the deck of my estate, a place she knew absolutely nothing about. My name is Clara, and I'm 66 years old. For a long time, I was the woman standing in the background, keeping my mouth shut. I stared at the phone in my hand, a strange thumping in my temples, echoing the cold silence of the room. My son Julian hadn't written that text. He always left that kind of dirty work to Mia. Mia controlled everything from vacation itineraries to who got a seat at the big table for Christmas. And who didn't. I didn't type back a response. Instead, I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a renovated farmhouse up in the Catskills that I'd discreetly picked up after selling my company. No one in the family knew it existed. I wanted a sanctuary just for me somewhere far away from Mia's constant judging of status and net worth. For years, I'd quietly tried to please her. I'd babysit the grandkids whenever it was convenient for her, and I'd stay silent when she snubbed me in front of guests. I'd defended Julian, telling myself he just wanted to keep the peace. But today, that ended. I was officially done begging for a seat at the table. I turned around and set the phone face down on the massive oak kitchen island. My mind was made up. If Mia was going to dictate the guest list, for the family, holidays, I'd just write my own. I didn't feel hot rage. I felt a liberating, deep, quiet clarity. It was time to take the reins. I opened my notebook and started listing the names of everyone Mia had ruthlessly weeded out over the last few years. Aunts, cousins, old family friends, anyone who didn't fit her perfect aesthetic. I looked back at the silent phone, then dialed the very first number. It was time to send out a much better invitation for my own grand party in the snow. The first call was to my brother-in-law, Arthur. "Clara," he answered, sounding surprised. "We thought you were traveling. Mia said you wanted some peace and quiet this year." I smiled bitterly. So that was her story. "No, Arthur," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I'm hosting a party at my place in the mountains, and I'd love for you and Martha to come." The shock on the other end was almost tangible. I didn't explain much, and I didn't complain about Mia. I didn't need to anymore. I just gave him the date and the address. Then I called my cousin Sarah, then Uncle Harold. Everyone told me the same version of the story. Mia had led them to believe the holiday was going to be extremely intimate. No room, just the inner circle. Apparently, the inner circle only consisted of Mia's well-to-do relatives. After the fifth call, I set the phone aside and took a sip of water. I felt a quick pang of guilt. Had I raised Julian to be too weak? Probably. After his father died, I'd cleared every obstacle from his path. Now I was paying for it. He let Mia run the show because it was easier than standing up for himself. But I wasn't here to dig through the past. I had to be pragmatic. I grabbed my laptop. A party for 20 people required real logistics. Luckily, I was used to running things. I booked a local catering service from the next town over. Nothing over the top, just honest, fantastic food. Roast goose, savory stuffings, excellent wine. I sent a short, polite text back to Mia. Have a great time. I've already made some lovely plans of my own. No accusations, no debate. Just a clear boundary. Then I opened my banking app. There was one little piece of business I should have handled a long time ago, but I'd put it off out of convenience and misplaced guilt. The recurring payment for Julian's expensive SUV lit up the screen. I took a deep breath, thought about the last few years, and confirmed the cancellation with a single click. I smiled to myself. That little financial adjustment was going to bring a lot of clarity to our family dynamic very soon. I could promise that much. I spent the next few days getting ready. My house had plenty of room, but I needed to prep the guest rooms. As I put fresh linens on the beds, I thought about the subtle power plays of the last few years. Mia never screamed. She just slowly made me invisible. At her parties, I was usually tucked away at the edge of the room, far from the important conversations. When it came time to pay for the expensive wine, I was good enough. When it came to actual inclusion, I was an inconvenience. I fluffed the pillows. I didn't feel like a victim. When you let people walk all over you, you're partially to blame for the footprints. I'd stayed quiet for a long time just so I wouldn't lose Julian. But love shouldn't mean erasing yourself. Tuesday morning, a text came in from Julian. Hey, Mom, about Christmas. Mia thinks it's just going to be too stressful with a big crowd this year. We'll make it up to you in January. Okay? Love you. Not even a phone call. Just a fleeting text. In the past, that would have crushed me. Today, all I saw was the cowardice of a man who avoids conflict at all costs. I typed back quickly. No problem, Julian. Don't worry about me. I'm all set. I didn't use any irony. Irony is a sign of emotional dependence. I was independent. That afternoon, the local florist arrived with fresh pine boughs and simple white candles. The house smelled like cedar and anticipation. You don't need over-the-top luxury to create warmth. You just need real people. I went into the kitchen to prep the dough for my mother's old cookie recipe. As I was kneading the dough, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, from my place in the city. I'd asked him to check my mail. He sounded a bit confused. Mrs. Weber, there's a rather thick letter here from the car dealership addressed to your son. Should I drop it off to him? I wiped some flour off my hands and smiled at the empty room. No, Mr. Henderson, just leave it with the rest of my mail on the foyer table. Julian has his own key to the apartment if he really needs to pick up something important. That was more than enough. 2 days before the party, I was back at my apartment in the city. I'd driven in one last time to grab some old family albums. The air in the apartment felt stuffy, even though I'd only been gone a week. There on the foyer table sat the letter from the dealership. I knew exactly what it said, a notice for the unpaid lease payment. Julian was used to comfort. He made a good salary, but Mia spent it faster than he could earn it. 2 years ago, when Julian complained about a cash flow crunch, I'd quietly set up the auto pay for his car. Mia had treated it like it was her birthright. Not once had a thank you crossed her lips. I didn't open the letter. It wasn't my mail anymore. I left it right there, highly visible next to the key bowl. Then I went into the living room and grabbed the framed photos from the mantle pictures of me with the relatives I'd actually invited. In that moment, I heard a noise at the front door. Someone was putting a key in the lock. I stood perfectly still by the window. The door swung open and I heard Julian's familiar voice. He was talking to Mia. Just grab the packages from my mom's place. I'll wait here, she said irritably from the hallway. They often had their deliveries sent to my place because I was home all day anyway. Julian stepped inside and froze when he saw me. "Mom, I thought you were out shopping. Why is it so cold in here?" He looked nervously back toward the door. He hated it when Mia and I were in the same room. I gave him a relaxed smile. "Just packing some things for the holidays," I said, casually. Then I watched his eyes drift to the table. The large envelope with the prominent dealership logo was impossible to miss. Julian frowned, reached for it tentatively, and slowly turned the envelope over in his hands. He opened it, scanned the lines, and went pale. Outside, Mia called his name loudly, but he just stared at the paper, speechless. "Perfect. Mom, what is this?" Julian asked quietly. His voice sounded thin. The payment for the car didn't go through. I calmly slid the photo albums into my travel bag. "That's right. I canceled the auto pay last week." He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "But why?" "We need that car. Mia needs it for the errands and the kids." I walked closer to him and looked him right in the eye. I didn't raise my voice. I stayed completely centered. "Julian, you're 40 years old. You make a good living. I was happy to help when things were tight. But it's time you paid your own bills, especially since you clearly have enough money to host an exclusive party for Mia's family." He swallowed hard. "Mom, about Christmas. Mia really thought it would be too crowded. It wasn't about you." I placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm. "It's fine, honey. You celebrate the way you see fit. And I'm doing the exact same thing." From the hallway, Mia's voice rang out again. "Julian, hurry up. These boxes are heavy." Julian looked frantically toward the door. He wanted to start a debate. I could see it in his eyes, but the habit of obeying Mia immediately was stronger. He let the notice sink back onto the table, grabbed the packages piled in the hallway, and gave me a hasty nod. "We'll talk later, Mom. I promise." He practically fled the apartment. I watched him go without a shred of regret. The days of me chasing after him were over. I took my packed bag, checked one last time that the thermostat was turned down, and left. The key turned in the lock with a solid, satisfying click. As I got into my car and started the engine, I felt lighter than I had in years. The roads out to the country were clear. The way back to my estate was wide open and bright. This party was going to be a wonderful turning point in my new life, I thought with a quiet smile. On the afternoon of Christmas Eve, the farmhouse was buried deep in snow under a crystal blue sky. The catering team had already taken over the kitchen, and the scent of braised red cabbage and roasted apples filled the house. I had set the long wooden table in the hearth room with simple, elegant linens. Promptly at 5 o'clock, the first car pulled up the gravel driveway. It was Uncle Harold. When he stepped out and saw the massive, glowing house lit up with fairy lights, he just stood there with his mouth open. "Clara," he said when I opened the door, "we thought you were living in some tiny cabin in the woods." "What is this place?" I took his coat with a smile. "This is home, Harold. Come in, the fire's already going." Shortly after, my cousin Sarah arrived with her family. They were just as stunned. I had never bragged about buying the farm. To Mia, it would have immediately become a competition, or she would have tried to commandeer the house for her own purposes. This way, it belonged only to me. The atmosphere was warm from the very first moment. No one felt the need to prove anything. No one was checking for designer labels the way Mia always insisted. The kids ran through the wide hallways laughing while the adults stood by the fireplace with mulled wine. There were no sharp remarks, no hidden power games, just family. As I moved through the room, refilling glasses, I felt a deep peace. In the past, I'd been the silent helper in the background, clearing dishes while Mia played the hostess. Today, I was the one holding the room together. I hadn't forced myself into the role of a victim. I had simply set my own rules. Sarah stepped up beside me and put an arm around my shoulder. "This is the best Christmas we've had in years, Clara. It's a shame Julian is missing this." I nodded slowly. Yes. But it was his choice. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah's daughter hold up her phone and snap a group photo of us in front of the fireplace. I knew exactly how long that photo would stay a secret, but it didn't bother me one bit. The evening was perfect. Dinner was a total triumph. The roast was crispy, the wine was excellent. We all sat around the long table, the warm candlelight reflecting in the windows as the snow fell outside. No one talked about Mia. No one gossiped. That had been important to me. We weren't celebrating against someone. We were just celebrating for us. Sarah's daughter, sitting at the end of the table, was tapping away on her phone. "I just posted a few photos in the family group chat," she said casually, reaching for more sides. "The others should see what a gorgeous place you have, Aunt Clara." I just smiled and took a sip of water. I had no interest in petty revenge. But consequences are simply the result of actions. Mia had tried to uninvite me and half the family tree to preserve her elite image. Now she was seeing that we didn't need her. After dinner, we exchanged small personal gifts, nothing expensive, just things that showed we actually knew each other. A good book for Harold, hand-knit socks for the kids. I soaked in the laughter and the easy energy. Suddenly, I felt my phone vibrate in my cardigan pocket. I ignored it. A few minutes later, it vibrated again. And then again, it was obvious the photos had hit the chat. I set my glass down and walked slowly into the kitchen to check the screen in private. 5 missed calls from Julian, 3 texts from Mia. I wiped the screen clean. No panic rose in me, no guilt. I didn't open the messages immediately. I just leaned back against the wooden counter. From the living room, I heard the hearty laughter of my guests. The dynamic had officially shifted. I was no longer the small, annoying problem that could be conveniently ignored during the holidays. The phone in my hand lit up again. This time, it was a FaceTime call. Julian was trying again. I brushed a stray silver hair from my forehead, took a deep breath, and decisively pressed the green button. Finally. On the screen, it wasn't just Julian. Mia was there too, crowding into the frame. In the background, I could see their modern yet strangely cold living room. "Clara, what is going on?" Mia snapped immediately, skipping any greeting. Her voice was shrill. "Whose house is that in the photos? And why are Uncle Harold and everyone else there? You told us you had plans. You didn't say you were hosting a rival party." I held the phone steady. "Good evening, Mia." "Merry Christmas, Julian," I said calmly. "It's not a rival party. It's my home. I invited the people I wanted to spend time with. You didn't have room for us anyway, remember?" Julian looked completely blindsided. "Your home? Mom, what are you talking about? You just have the apartment in the city." "I kept the apartment, yes," I explained matter-of-factly, "but I bought this farm a while back. It's a nice retreat." Mia gasped. Her eyes darted around the screen, trying to take in the background of my kitchen, the custom woodwork, the stone walls. It was exactly the kind of real estate she would have loved to brag about to her friends. "Why did you hide this from us?" Julian asked, and now he sounded hurt. "You know we've been looking for something bigger for months. And you just buy a massive estate and say nothing. Because you never asked how I was actually doing, Julian, I replied quietly. And because Mia made it very clear that this year was only for the real family. So I gathered my real family around me. Family around. Mia opened her mouth to say something sharp, but the words failed her. The loss of control was written all over her face. She was no longer the director of our lives. Julian rubbed his temples, looking exhausted. Mom, the car lease thing, was that part of this? Did you do that on purpose? I gave a tiny smile. I just reorganized my finances, Julian. That's all. The screen showed two completely stunned faces. I hovered my finger over the red button. You'll have to excuse me, I said before Mia could recover. My guests are waiting for dessert. We still have a wonderful evening ahead of us. Clara, wait. Julian called out, sounding panicked. Can we come by tomorrow? We want to see the place. We need to talk. I looked at him for a moment. He sounded like a little boy who had just realized the best toy was at someone else's house. I'm busy tomorrow, I answered. I'm taking Sarah and the kids snow tubing. And after that, I'll need some quiet time. You can reach out in the new year. We'll grab coffee in the city. In the city, Mia chimed in, the indignation returning to her voice. Why not here? This place is plenty big enough. Because this is my private sanctuary, I said firmly. And I only invite people into this space who value me, regardless of whether I'm paying for their car or providing free childcare. I looked at Julian. I love you, Julian, but I'm done being treated like a piece of furniture that you pull out when you need it and put in storage when you don't. Without waiting for another word, I ended the call. The screen went black. It felt like I'd just dropped a heavy, wet blanket I'd been carrying on my shoulders for years. I set the phone on the counter and took a deep breath. No tears, no drama. Just the clean, cold reality of cause and effect. I walked back into the living room where the laughter was in full swing. As I sat back down, Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. She didn't ask who had called. She probably knew. I raised my glass of red wine, toasted Uncle Harold, and took a sip. It was the best wine I'd tasted in a very long time. The rest of the night was incredibly peaceful, and I knew in my heart that everything had changed for good. My old life was over. Thank God. Cheers. The weeks following that party fundamentally changed our family dynamic. Julian tried to visit me in the city several times. Sometimes he brought flowers. Mia mostly stayed in the background. She'd realized she lost her leverage the moment I stopped letting her control my time. Without my money for the car, they had to scale back their lifestyle. It was a hard pill for them to swallow, but it was healthy for Julian. In mid-February, I finally invited them both up to the farm. There was no tearful cinematic reconciliation. There were just clear rules. I showed them around, made some coffee, and we sat at the big table. Mia tried to steer the conversation towards summer vacations at the house. I shut it down politely but firmly. The house is already booked for the summer, I said. Sarah and the kids are coming up. Mia swallowed her anger because she knew one wrong word would be the end of our fragile peace. Julian had become quieter, more thoughtful. He offered to help repair the old garden fence. I took him up on it. It did him good to do something real instead of hiding behind Mia's demands. I haven't become cynical. I've just become enough of an adult to accept that some family bonds only work if you build strong, high fences. I often sit on my deck in the evenings now, drinking a cup of tea and watching the sun dip behind the snow-capped peaks. I didn't just find a new place to live. I rediscovered my own worth. If someone types 11 words today to uninvite me from their life, I just smile. Because I know exactly where my seat at the table is. I don't have to beg for it anymore. I am the hostess of my own life, and I decide who gets to sit with me. It's a good, quiet life without the unnecessary noise. For real respect, the door is always open, but for anything else, it stays locked tight. This is my path now, self-determined and above all, peaceful.